We are all addicts in some sense, right? Except that some are addicted to Coke, as in Coca-Cola.
Addiction to sex, addiction to danger, addiction to love.
Games are addictions as well. Gambling, shopping. There are many addictions that people can get into. Except that today our main focus has been on drugs. We generally look at drug use as a learned behavior. We learn it because the use of drugs gives us something, a reward, right? And so the more we are rewarded for taking drugs, the more we will continue it.
You see a lot of people in impoverished areas using shabu. Why? Because it feeds their emptiness. It feeds their ego because it's a stimulant. It makes them feel good. And when something makes you feel good, you want to go back to it.
Different drugs affect our brain differently, but in general, stimulants, for example, they really change the way that our brains are wired.
Ang pinaka-common na ginagamit natin is shabu. Methamphetamine hydrochloride, which is a stimulant. Ang epekto nito, parang switch ka. Kung malungkot ka, bigla kang sasaya. It causes a flooding of the neurotransmitter called dopamine into the brain. Dopamine is called the pleasure chemical in the brain.
The thing is, food provides us increased dopamine, but meth, it produces a high unlike any natural substance.
So yung presence nito, nagkukos ng extreme euphoria.
Of course, because it produces a high, its low is also very steep.
So what will they do? They'll take again. So yung constant use and reuse, nagkakaroon ka ng neuroadaptation sa brain.
That's what creates the addiction. So you rely more and more on the artificial substance to be happy. Our studies and research shows that only a small percentage of people who use drugs actually are addicts. And when we talk about addiction itself, there are 4 things that we look for according to DSM-5. The first is impaired control, meaning you want to stop, but you can't seem to stop. There is that desire to not take it, but it's a desire that you cannot control. The second thing is social impairment, meaning is it affecting already your obligations, your relationships, the things that you normally can do, you cannot do anymore because of your drug use. A third criteria is tolerance, that I need to take an increasing amount of substance in order to feel the same high or to get the same effects that I used to. And then the fourth criteria is what we call risky use. I'm using it even if I'm already feeling the negative effects of its use. I may be using it in situations that put me at risk, but I'm still using it. When we look at SUD or substance use disorder, we look at, are these criteria present in the life of the person using drugs?
Meron kasi mga severities of addiction. There are users, abusers, and dependents, or what some will classify as mild, moderate, and severe.
It depends on the number of symptoms that are present. Because for each of these criteria, there are specific symptoms that we look for. For example, a mild user might have 2 or 3 of these symptoms. A moderate user might have 4 to 5 of these symptoms. And a severe or a dependent would have more than 6 of these symptoms. Well, in our latest study, for example, here, we found that only about 15% can be classified as dependent. All the rest are low, mild, even moderate users, but not dependent.
You don't get severely addicted overnight. It takes a long process. When you start using occasionally, during parties, during birthdays, during fiestas, occasional users yan, hindi apektado ang trabaho mo, hindi apektado ang pamilya mo. And then your habit increases. You start developing problems, but you can still cope until natanggal ka na sa trabaho, na-kick out ka na, nagkaroon ka ng problema sa law, nahuli ka, or whatever, nagtutuloy-tuloy yan, it's increasing. So when you become severely addicted, the very first thing comes into your mind when you open your eyes is, Where can I get the next score for drugs? Paano kukuha ng pera? Sino ba lolokohin ko? Ano na nakawin ko? Ano ibibenta ko? Yan, mga dependents na yan. On the ground, drug dependents are victims. Drug dependents are patients who have become dependent on a substance that they have a hard time adjusting, not using the drug. Some of them have kapit sa patalim, gone to the extent of peddling themselves, peddling stolen goods, or even peddling drugs just to support their habit. Some of them become alienated to their families because ninakawan nila yung tatay nila, nanay nila, gumawa sila ng bagay na ikasisira ng tiwala ng pamilya sa kanila. So they become outcasts. Nahuhuli, nakukulong, namamarkahan din sila legally. And some drug dependents, they'll try to escape further. They'll use the drugs kasi form of escape din sa kanila yan. So isipin nyo ang sitwasyon nila, napakakawawa nila.
People don't wake up and say, I will become an addict, or I will become a criminal. People wake up, have problems in their lives, and make a bad decision to use drugs. And then they repeat those decisions again and again.
Because why? Humans are hedonistic. We go for masarap, avoid the masakit. Natural yan sa lahat ng tao, even mga hayop.
And usually, we use it in the first place because of a number of things. Because we don't know how to deal with our emotions, we don't know how to deal with our problems, and drugs is a nice way of, I guess, escaping from these. For others, drug use can be experimental, or even there might even be a productive element to it. Some people use it because they think it makes them work harder or gives them more energy. So there is that component to it also. But at a certain point, if they become reliant on it, how do you know? When it starts becoming harmful to them, can they stop? Or is their ability to fight addiction not enough? Because some people can walk away, but there are some who can't.
Some people will even use drugs and never use drugs again. Meaning to say, merong predisposition ng ilang tao to become drug dependents. But how we will know, we will never know unless the people uses drugs, no?
There are genetic predispositions. For example, alcoholism runs in the family.
We found that in studies that were done with alcoholic twins. Even if they were separated and brought up separately, nakita mo, ba't pareho ang pattern nila? Nagiging alcohol dependent itong pareho sila. And they never met each other.
There are also what we call personality factors. So for example, people who are very high in risk-taking or very low in what we call impulse control, they cannot control themselves. There can be pain, a lot of pain because of childhood abuse or experience. Or simply, they don't have coping skills. There are also certain what we call comorbid psychiatric disorders like depression and anxiety that may exacerbate the vulnerability of a person towards addiction.
Ang tawag dyan ay mentally ill chemical abusers or MICA or comorbid disorder patients. Some patients have already psychotic tendencies or have subclinical psychosis. When they take shabu, it brings the disease to the overt. Ang end result doon, you can go into full-blown psychosis. Yung karamihan na nagko-create ng heinous crimes na yan, usually may mga mental problems na yan eh. Nag-develop ng paranoia or may mga personality disorders talaga na problematic like antisocial sila, narcissistic sila, borderline sila. If you're a narcissist and you take shabu, my God, that's like feeding fuel to the fire.
I think what's really important is we recognize that drug use is not a moral weakness, that it is a bad decision made by people. And it's a bad decision that can be unlearned.
Drug dependence is treatable. There is such a thing as neuroadaptation to drug use. There's also such a thing as neuroadaptation to going back to a non-drug use state. So babalik yan unti-unti. The brain adapts again. The brain literally gets healed.
And so the important thing here is there are programs and services who can help people who need help.
Dapat bigyan mo rin ng importansya yung oportunidad na mabibigay sa mga pasyenteng gustong magpagamot. The Department of Health Drug Treatment Center on Bikutan is ready and willing to help anybody who needs help. Regardless, wala kaming tinataboy, wala kaming pinaprejudice na ano. We are always open here and we are really accessible and willing to help. There is hope after drugs.